Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's conversation about suicide awareness and prevention. My name is Sarah McCauley. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I work in Lake Elmo, Minnesota. I've known Kim for many, many years, and I'm very grateful to be brought in for this conversation today. So we're just going to go over a couple things. This is a re-recording of our live broadcast. We had some technical issues, so please be patient and thank you for coming along on the ride with us. So quick thing I really encourage all of you to take to heart is we're talking about some very challenging topics today. We're talking about suicide, reasons people commit suicide, and ways to prevent suicide. If you have walked this path or have loved someone who has walked this path, please be aware of your own reactions. If you need to take a break, pause and walk away. If you need to stop watching the video, that is okay too. It is very normal to have intense reactions to this topic. It's a tough thing to talk about. So quick statistics, quick overview is almost 50,000 people in the U.S. commit suicide every year. They have been at an all-time high, peaking in 2022. We did see that number go down in 2023. We are anticipating it going back up. We've seen a very rapid change over the last 10 years, especially the past 20 years, I should say. And almost 750,000 people complete suicide globally every year. Now, we're going to go over a little bit of the reasons that people do commit suicide, the ways people commit suicide, and the level of risk and reducing that risk. Now, number one biggest thing is that violent means to ending one's life, more lethal means, are more common. So firearms, and these are most often utilized by men. Women are more likely to use suffocation and poisoning, and are more likely to have more attempts rather than completing suicide the first time they try. About the numbers that we see is we don't necessarily know the number of attempts people engage in. That's a hard thing to get an accurate number on. And previous attempts are one of the top indicators of a suicide completion. And we're going to be going through a couple other statistics really quick. Here's, I think, a very beautiful and very painful thing from the CDC is, 48,000 people died by suicide in the United States in 2021. That's about one death for 11 minutes. 12.3 million adults thought about it. Only 3.5 million made a plan, and only 1.7 attempted. And of that 1.7, 48,000 succeeded. Those are some big differences, and those are a big spectrum of ways we encounter suicide and suicidal thinking, suicidal ideation, and should be talked about very differently. There's a very big difference between a fleeting thought and acting out a plan. Here's a bit more of a breakdown of the numbers we've seen from 2021 to 2022. You can see this is from age 10 to 65, over 65, and there's a pretty diverse distribution. We're seeing some numbers go up, some numbers go down. I like this depiction a little bit better. It gives us a better insight. You can see those who are 85 and older are the highest rate of suicide. And it cannot be ignored. The second highest rate, 25 to 34, and ages 10 to 14. I've seen, and we've worked with folks as young as 8 with suicidal thinking. I've worked with folks as old as 105. The way this manifests throughout one's life looks very, very different and should be approached very differently. And this is a broad overview from 2000, how much suicide has changed throughout the last 20 years, that we've seen it massively grow, and there's been a big decrease. These rates that we are seeing nowadays is actually very similar to the Great Depression and the economic collapse that occurred then. So when we talk about risk factors, we talk about who is at risk of committing suicide. Only 4 out of 5 suicides have warning signs. And I'll draw from an example of a current event that happened within the last year. A fairly famous public figure. He went by Twitch. He was a dancer and an entertainer on Ellen DeGeneres' show. And what we found is, he was married, had kids, living his dream job, all of these incredible things, no history of depression and suicide, and completed suicide. Anyone can experience suicidal ideation. There are populations and individuals who are more at risk, and we're going to be aware of those. We're going to talk about those. The ACE inventory, Adverse Childhood Experiences, talks about things that occur in childhood that lead to higher rates of physical and mental health concerns and higher risk of suicide. This can be familial instability, economic instability, emotional instability, divorce, violence in your community, insecure food, an adult in your home who had untreated mental health conditions. All of these can factor into an increased ACE score. We talked a little bit about how men and women have differing numbers with attempts versus completions of the suicidal act. We also see a significant numerical difference, a statistical difference in those in marginalized populations, such as those who are in oppressed groups in the indigenous population, African American population, as well as the queer community, are more likely to experience suicidal thought and successful completion of suicide. With that, and the course of the last several years, isolation is another big factor, both perceived and actual. Whether that's physical isolation due to being ill or living in a senior community where you're not physically interacting with many people. Emotional isolation. For many kids, moving to online learning was a barrier between them and some other safe adults. If teachers and their school community was a safe space for them. If there are weapons within the home, that does increase risk. If there is lack of safety and instability within their home environment, whether that's income, housing, food related, those are all additional factors. From a clinical perspective, diagnostic risk factors. If someone has a history of depression, that is a risk factor. The way depression manifests, not all individuals with depression will have suicidal thinking. Not all depressed individuals have self-harm thoughts. Those who do, we take very seriously, and we want to be talking about to what end and to what extreme. Sometimes those same thoughts can come up with medication or treatment noncompliance, especially if there is poor sleep hygiene, inconsistent sleep, increased risk of hallucination, delusion, paranoia, or substance use. All of those can impair judgment, impair impulse control, and rational thinking. There are a number of warning signs that have been found with those 4 out of 5 that we have been able to predict. Having previous attempts, threats of suicide, depression diagnoses, preoccupation or obsessions with death, and making previous planning behavior, making arrangements for their loss. Those are some factors, as well as if they have a recent loss, like a relationship or a loss of a loved one, loss of a job, risk of substance use, instability in the home or change in the home, like separation or divorce in the family, real or perceived isolation, increase in shame, guilt, humiliation, rejection. This is why we get concerned about bullying behavior, leading to risk of suicide in those being bullied. An increase of physical or psychological pain and stress. When we work with folks with chronic pain and chronic illness or something that is not able to be treated, there is a feeling of desperation, of a desire for the suffering to end. Increase of risk-taking behavior or a substantial dramatic change in mood or temperament. These are all nonverbal cries for help. And this is the way I want all of you to be thinking about attention-seeking behaviors, things that we might call attention-seeking, like superficial self-injury or an increase of behaviors, is a nonverbal way of saying, I need help. I don't feel safe. I don't feel comfortable. Something's not right. For as much we talk about risk, we also want to talk about resiliency. What are ways that we can care for those who are suffering? My number one job as a provider is someone comes to me and says, I don't feel safe. I'm worried I'm going to hurt myself. I'm worried someone else is going to hurt themselves. We talk about reducing risk through harm reduction, barriers to access. We want to make sure they don't have access to the tools they might feel drawn towards using. So anything that we can reduce around impulsive behaviors, having one-to-one eyes on someone, making sure that knives, medications, firearms, etc. are removed and stored safely, and other safety mechanisms to help reduce the risk of someone acting on that in that first 10 minutes, 12 to 24 hours, and 48 hours after that initial big desire to harm oneself. Protective measures. Having a commitment to your family, to your parish community, to pets, to relationships, something to look forward to, does help people want to stay alive. When someone discloses this burden of desiring to not live or feeling scared by the thoughts they're experiencing, our job is to be compassionate and non-judgmental, to remind them they are a child of God, they are created from love, and it is good and necessary they exist. Sitting with them and being with them, being attuned to them, is an incredibly critical piece. Now, as a provider, we talk a lot about who is in your web, your care team, who's walking with you. You have your therapist, your psychiatrist, your primary care doctor, your priest, your teachers, your coaches, your family, your neighbors. All of these are people who are part of your care team, because this is too much to shoulder alone, both as the person navigating this and as a support person. When we see people internalize shame and self-hatred or perception of self as inherently flawed or sinful to an extreme, it is very, very high risk when it comes to risk of suicide, and we want to reinforce they have dignity, they are inherently good. We're all sinners, and we are called to greatness, we are called to goodness, and we are called to love. When we are assessing for suicide risk, it's important to delineate that sometimes the desire to not live is not actually the desire to die. It is a desire to end suffering, a desire to not feel trapped. It is an option that is not always a good option. Same with self-harm or intrusive thoughts. Intrusive thoughts are sometimes things that pop up, like what would happen if I slap someone? What would happen if I drive off this bridge? That are unwanted, undesired, and distressing to that person. And knowing that feeling of not wanting to be alive, of wanting to take action towards that, is distressing very often for the person. When we're talking about this broad range of development of life with suicidality, we want to be conscientious of how do we talk about this in a developmentally appropriate way. How we talk about keeping our body and our brain safe to an 8-year-old is very different than a 16 or a 50-year-old or an 86-year-old. So being conscientious of encouraging clear and open conversation about worries, fears, experiences, emotions benefit everyone. And that the saints suffered too. You're not a bad Catholic if you experience mental health symptoms. You're human. And I personally take a lot of comfort and joy in peace in the story of the Garden of Gethsemane, and that Christ cried tears of blood. He understands suffering on such a deep and inherent level that he can walk with you. He understands you and loves you in that suffering. And to bring those together of our understanding of our mental health conditions, the suffering that may come from that, and our relationship to Christ. So continuing on with that Catholic perspective, Saint Oscar Romero, Saint Dymphna, Saint Teresa Benedicta of the Cross, Saint Therese of Lisieux, all of those saints had suffered with suicidal ideation. They suffered with depression, dark nights of the soul. There's the story in the Bible, Job. Job experienced a lot of suffering, and his desire was not to curse God. It was, come sit in the mud. Come acknowledge my suffering. Come have compassion for me. Suffer with. And I also, as a care provider, as someone who's walked with folks with suicidal ideation, think a lot about Simon of Cyrene. Sometimes we are called to help someone carry their cross, that it's too much to carry alone. And what a great gift to see that acted out in the Passion. I really strongly encourage you to stay away from potentially harmful language with individuals who are navigating suicidality, such as pray it away, give it to God, you're not trusting God enough, smile more. These are not helpful things to hear when you are scared and overwhelmed and feeling alone. Sometimes the best thing to say is either nothing at all or acknowledging that their experience is real and that we all have dark nights of the soul at times. If you have questions about what does it mean to pray for someone and to bury someone who did complete suicide, both the USCCB, I apologize, there's a typo on there, and the Vatican have great statements that have been updated within the last 20 or 30 years about burial protocol and prayers for those who completed suicide. In my role as a Catholic therapist, I feel great privilege. I have clinical training of how to walk with those who experience mental health crises, and I see that through the lens of being a Catholic, of walking with folks in great suffering, to honor them, to love them, and to help them find their dignity again. There are some incredible resources out there. I tried to include some specific to Illinois that, first of all, if we increase some funding for and encourage people to use community mental health resources, the funding and things allow those programs to grow, allow providers to earn an income to provide that care, and only benefits those in higher risk. The NAMI-WillGrundy.org resource is a local chapter of NAMI, the National Association for Mental Illness, where they have support groups, education, trainings for professionals, and some incredible resources, as well as the Warm Line and the Suicide Hotline. These are numbers to call, resources to have. You can text them as well or chat online if you are not feeling like you can speak with someone in your immediate community. It is a trained professional or a volunteer who is able to help you stay safe. These are great resources. And another one is the Eden Initiative. This is a relatively new nonprofit that is specifically designed to help individuals who are queer and who are Catholic maintain their relationship to Christ and live out their faith fully, while also providing safety for those who might not have community and connection. So that isolation component, dignity of the human person, while also honoring the crosses they bear. It's an amazing organization. And one of the best things we can do is to keep talking about our emotions, our resources, be present for one another, welcome in conversation, and be ready to listen. So I thank all of you for having this conversation today, to listen, and I look forward to any questions you may have going forward. Thank you.